My mom and sister looked at me like I'd sprouted two heads, their mouths gaping wide. Their eyes reflected years of whispered warnings and slammed doors, a constant reminder of their doubts. "Are you sure there's no mistake, honey?" my mother asked, her voice laced with a pity that cut deeper than any insult. Lisa tilted her head, a gesture I knew meant she was deciding whether to pity or mock me. Mistake? Cut me some slack, Mom. I fought the urge to roll my eyes, to shrink back into the role they'd always assigned me. "I'm getting married, whether you come or not." They exchanged one of those silent, loaded glances that only people who've rehearsed a lifetime together can manage. "Fine," my mother said, her voice tight. "We'll be there," Lisa added, her tone like an accusation. "You haven't shown us a picture." "It'll be a surprise," I said, wanting to shock them. Surprise was a proof they couldn't smother with their skepticism. I imagined their faces, a fleeting moment of stunned silence before they could twist it into another reason to doubt me. On the morning, the chapel reeked of beeswax and lilies, a cloying sweetness that felt like a shroud. The air was thick and shimmering from the heat outside. Guests trickled in like cautious birds, most of them there to see the spectacle. I felt their eyes on my back, a line of little knives. They thought they were coming to witness a fall, a public confirmation of all their fears. I had rehearsed my walk, practiced appearing normal. I could do endurance. I could do normal. But the last thing I needed for a wedding was a husband. He had been waiting in the boot of my car, hidden under the long reach of the sycamores, where the shade pooled like a guilty secret. When I lifted the lid, the heat hit me, thick and suffocating, mingled with a faint metallic tang, like old blood. He looked like a faded photograph. The same features, but the white suit was damp, the shoes scuffed. Rope had bitten into his wrists, leaving angry red marks. Duct tape muffled his mouth, a crude gray gag. His eyes found mine, and I tried to read them as consent, though they were small and pale and full of calculation, or maybe pleading. It didn't matter which. I remembered how it felt to want a thing so utterly you could twist any answer into agreement. He tried to speak, but the tape swallowed his words. "I kept him cool," I told him, my voice flat. "You'll thank me later." He squirmed, the rope digging deeper into his skin. For a moment, I saw the ghost of someone I might have loved before the world branded me dangerous. I thought of my family's doubt. The years they'd folded me into stories about instability and episodes. I had promised myself one thing, to be seen as ordinary on this day. Better to be called a fool than to be right and alone. I rolled his shoulders, eased him onto a dolly I'd brought for theatrics, because every wedding needed choreography, and pushed. The chapel doors opened like a gaping mouth. Heads turned. At first, weren't for the man, they were for my audacity. The air inside smelled faintly of lilies and church polish, a scent that always made me think of memory. Walked past pews, the world narrowing to the sound of my shoes on tile and my own ragged breathing. The closer I got to the altar, the narrower everything became. All that existed was the man in the white suit and the small wetness at the corner of his eye. I had rehearsed this, memorized vows that sounded ordinary and careful. I wanted sincerity to be a weapon against the scorn waiting in every stare. Someone moved forward, an aunt perhaps, with too much lipstick. Her hand hovered, then landed on the dolly. A question turned to accusation. "Stern, Beth," she said, like lighting a match in a dark room. The man's bound fingers twitched. Under the tape, his lips worked hard, forming shapes. I leaned down, because that's what you do with someone you love. You get close to hear the things you don't want anyone else to know. He said my name. It was muffled and jagged, but unmistakable. It sounded like all the times I woke in my own voice, lost and terrified, and like the apologies I whispered to hospital walls. My chest opened with something like relief. "Bring him up," I said, thinking of the gasp that would come when I unveiled the surprise. Someone laughed then, low and brittle. A child pointed and cried, "He's got tape on his mouth." The sound ricocheted in me like a thrown stone. I reached for the tape, fingers trembling. My own hands were sure and quick. I peeled at the adhesive, and the canvas surrendered. His mouth moved soundlessly for an instant before he breathed out a clean human word. "I do." It wasn't his voice. It was mine, or 1,000 versions of mine threaded through years of private conversations, apologies, threats, lullabies. The chapel folded in on itself. People stood as if a wind had pushed them. Some covered their mouths. My mother's face had gone pale until the lipstick looked like a joke she'd been told. Everyone heard it, my voice, from his lips. But they did not hear the full sentence he gave me in that single, impossible syllable, an answer that stitched my fractured edges back together. Silence pressed against the glass. Outside, a car door slammed. A distant siren drifted in like a question. I straightened, the veil trembling like a held breath, and met the faces of the people who had always preferred the safe stories about me. Their expressions were unreadable. Now, horror, disbelief, a terrible, fascinated pity. I stepped forward and kissed the tape-scarred mouth. As my lips met him, his eyes locked with mine. No pleading, no calculation, just a depth that might have been gratitude, or might have been a final, lasting silence. When I drew back, he smiled, and it was an expression born from a mirror. The chapel seemed to hold its breath for a second longer. Outside, someone whispered, "Call the police." Inside, everyone waited for the moment I would become the thing in their stories. I slid a ring onto his bound hand because I had always wanted a proof. It fit loose and perfect on the rope-creased knuckle, and when he closed his fingers around it, he did not let go. The air tasted like lilies and overripe fruit and the hot metallic aftertaste of being seen.